Elena opened her eyes for the first time in 200 years. The cold sleep chamber hissed as it opened, releasing her into the bright lights of the ship's medical bay. Her body felt strange and heavy after so long in the freezing darkness. Machines beeped softly around her as they checked her health. "Welcome back, Dr. Vasquez," said a gentle voice. It was the ship's computer, speaking directly into her mind through the small device planted in her brain long ago. "You have been asleep for exactly 203 years, 4 months and 16 days. Elena sat up slowly, her muscles weak but working. She looked around the medical bay and saw hundreds of other chambers like hers. Most were still closed, their sleeping passengers waiting their turn to wake up. But some were open and empty, which meant other people had already been awakened before her. "How many are awake?" she asked, her voice rough from not speaking for so long. 12,741 people are now awake across all ships in the fleet," the computer answered. "Admiral Chen Liu has requested your presence on the command deck when you are ready." Elena nodded and slowly got out of the chamber. Her legs shook, but she could walk. A medical robot helped her put on a simple gray uniform and gave her a small drink that tasted like metal, but made her feel stronger. The ship was huge beyond imagination. Elena walked through long corridors that stretched for miles, passing windows that showed the darkness of space outside. She had helped design these ships long ago, but seeing them from inside after so much time felt like a dream. Other people walked past her in the corridors. Some looked human like her, but others had been changed by the long journey. Some had skin that sparkled like metal. Others had eyes that glowed softly in the dark. The radiation of space and the long sleep had changed them in ways their ancestors could never have imagined. "The fleet consists of 47 generation ships," the computer explained as Elena walked. "Each ship carries between 1 and 3 million sleeping humans. We are the children of Earth's last survivors." Elena remembered the day they had left Earth. She had been young then, barely 30 years old. The alien ships had filled the sky like angry storm clouds, raining fire on every human city. The hegemony had come without warning, without even trying to talk first. They simply decided that humans were too dangerous to live. Now she was old, though the long sleep had kept her body young. But her mind carried centuries of memories from before the sleep, downloaded into her brain by the ship's computers. She knew things that no single human had ever known before. The command deck was a vast room filled with floating screens and holographic displays. Admiral Chen Liu stood in the center, his tall figure surrounded by streams of data and light. Like Elena, he had been changed by the journey. His eyes were now silver and thin cables ran from his neck to the ship's main computer. "Elena," he said, turning to smile at her. "I hoped you would be among the first to wake. We need your expertise." She walked to stand beside him, looking at the displays that showed their current location. They were at the edge of the galaxy, far from where they had started their long journey. But the computer had been guiding them back toward the center, back toward Earth. "What do you see?" Chen asked, pointing at a large display that showed the Milky Way galaxy. Elena looked carefully. The galaxy was different from how she remembered it. Many of the bright spots that had once marked advanced civilizations were now dark. Whole regions that had once been filled with alien cities and space stations were empty. "The hegemony has shrunk," she said slowly. "Their empire is much smaller than it was when we left." "Exactly," Chen said. "We estimate they control less than half the space they once did. Something has been happening while we were gone." Elena studied the data more carefully. The computer fed information directly into her mind, showing her details about the current state of the galaxy. What she learned made her heart beat faster. "Earth," she whispered. "What happened to Earth?" Chen's face grew dark. "It still exists. But look at this." The display changed to show their home system. Earth was still there, still blue and green from space, but something was wrong. There were massive structures built on the surface, alien buildings that covered entire continents. The moon had been carved with strange symbols that could be seen from space. "The Zephyrians turned it into a monument," Chen explained. "A trophy to celebrate their victory over humanity." Elena felt anger rise in her chest, hot and powerful. The Zephyrians had been the leaders of the attack on humanity. They were the ones who had convinced the other alien species that humans were too dangerous to live. "There's more," Chen said softly. "Show her the slave worlds." The display changed again, showing dozens of planets scattered across what had once been human space. On each world, the sensors detected human life signs. But these were not free humans. They were the descendants of people who had been captured when Earth fell. They kept some of us alive, Elena realized, as slaves. 500,000 years, Chen said. 500,000 years of slavery. They've been breeding humans like animals, making them work in mines and factories. Most of them don't even know they're human anymore. Elena watched the displays showing these slave worlds. She could see human figures working in alien fields, building alien cities, serving alien masters. These people had no idea that their ancestors had once reached for the stars. "The children have no memories of Earth," she said quietly. "They don't know what they've lost." "But we do," Chen said, "and we've had 500,000 years to prepare." Elena looked around the command deck and began to understand. The humans here were not the same people who had fled Earth so long ago. They had grown and changed and learned during their long journey through the dark between stars. "What did we become?" she asked. Chen smiled, and it was not entirely human anymore. "We became what we needed to become. We learned to shape matter with our thoughts. We learned to fold space and time. We learned to turn stars into weapons and consciousness into armor." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "We're going back, aren't we?" "We're going home," Chen confirmed. "And we're going to finish what our ancestors started." "What about the hegemony? They won't just let us take back our worlds." Chen's silver eyes gleamed. "They had their chance to rule wisely. Instead, they built monuments from our graveyards and turned our children into slaves. They chose this war long ago." Elena looked out at the stars, thinking about the sleeping millions in the ships around them. Each one was a descendant of Earth, changed by the long journey but still carrying the memory of home in their DNA. "When do we begin?" she asked. "We already have," Chen said. "The first ships are already moving toward the old human systems. By the time the hegemony realizes we're back, it will be too late for them to prepare." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of centuries settling on her shoulders. They had traveled further than any humans in history. They had become more than their ancestors could have imagined. And now they were going home to settle a debt that was 500,000 years old. The long sleep was over. The children of Earth were awake. The Zephyrian monitoring station at Wolf 359 had watched the empty space for 3,000 years. Every day, the station's computers scanned the darkness between stars, looking for threats that might come to disturb the peace of the hegemony. Commander Kethvar had worked at the station for 60 years, which was still young for a Zephyrian. His forearms moved smoothly across the control panels as he checked the daily reports. Everything was normal. Everything was always normal. Then the station stopped existing. There was no explosion, no fire, no warning signals. One moment the station was there, a massive structure of metal and crystal floating in space. The next moment there was only empty darkness where it had been. The station, its crew of 800 beings and every piece of equipment simply vanished from reality. On the planet, Zephyr Prime, the Hegemony Council received the news with confusion. How does a space station just disappear? The Council sent investigation ships to Wolf 359, but they found nothing. No wreckage, no radiation, no signs that anything had ever been there at all. Perhaps it was a malfunction, suggested Counselor Vex Prime, her crystalline body glowing with nervous energy. Their quantum generators might have created a small, black hole. Impossible, replied High Commander Thexmore. Those generators were tested for centuries. They cannot fail in such a way. The argument continued for hours, but no one could explain what had happened. They decided to increase security at other monitoring stations and wait for more information. They did not have to wait long. Over the next few weeks, 12 more stations disappeared. Each time there was no warning, no sign of attack. The stations simply stopped being there. The Council began to panic, sending fleets of warships to guard the remaining outposts. But the attacks were not coming from outside. They were coming from inside reality itself. On the crystal world of Ixtar, the great computer minds that controlled the crystalline confederacy began to experience strange problems. For millions of years, these computers had shared thoughts across space, creating a single massive intelligence that guided their civilization. But now, new thoughts were appearing in their networks, thoughts that did not belong to any crystalline being. The first poem appeared on a Tuesday morning, printed on every screen in the capital city. Blue sky above, green grass below, where flying things with feathers go. A world of water, earth, and air where small soft creatures lived with care. The crystalline beings did not understand. What was a blue sky? What were feathers? Their world was made of living crystal, with no sky at all. They tried to delete the poem, but it kept appearing again. More poems followed. Stories about creatures called dogs and cats and birds. Tales of a world with rain and sunshine and seasons that changed. The crystalline computers began to fragment as these alien concepts spread through their network. For the first time in their history, individual crystalline beings began to think alone, apart from the group mind. Some found they liked this new feeling of being separate and unique. The Void Speakers, ancient beings of pure energy who lived in the spaces between dimensions, noticed that their technology was failing. Their dimensional gates, which had worked perfectly for millions of years, began opening to strange places. Instead of connecting different parts of the galaxy, the gates now opened to locations that should not exist. Some led to rooms filled with yellow light and the sound of water. Others opened onto vast green spaces under impossible blue skies. When Void Speaker Prime tried to analyze these new destinations, the gate network responded with a message written in symbols that hurt. To look at, "Welcome to Earth. Please enjoy your stay." Meanwhile, on the slave world Kepler 438b, a human girl named Arya tended the biofarms as she had done every day for 16 years. She was tall and strong, with dark skin and bright eyes that the alien overseer said looked too clever for a farm worker. Arya had been bred for this work like her parents before her. The hegemony had been careful to breed intelligence out of their human slaves over the centuries, creating people who were strong enough to work, but not smart enough to question their situation. But something was changing in Arya's mind. Dreams came to her at night, dreams of places she had never seen. In these dreams, she walked under an open sky filled with white clouds. She saw vast bodies of water that sparkled in golden light. She heard sounds that the dreams called bird, songs, and wind in trees. The dreams felt more real than her waking life. In them, she could feel cool air on her skin and smell flowers that had names like roses and lavender. She began to remember things she had never learned, knowledge that seemed to flow from somewhere deep inside her DNA. Other human slaves on Kepler 438b began having similar dreams. They started to gather in small groups, whispering about the strange visions that came to them in sleep. Some remembered words in a language they had never heard before: Earth, freedom, home. The alien overseers noticed the change in their slaves. The humans were working more slowly, asking more questions. Some had even begun to refuse direct orders, which had never happened before. Overseer Grex Null, a tall insect-like being with 6 arms and compound eyes, reported the problem to his superiors. "The humans are becoming difficult to control," he said. "They seem to be remembering things they should not know." His supervisor, a floating jellyfish creature named Blim 7, was not concerned. "Perhaps we need to adjust their breeding program. Again, remove more of the intelligence genes." But across 12 star systems, human slaves were all experiencing the same awakening. Something was activating dormant parts of their genetic code, awakening memories that had been sleeping for 500,000 years. In the space between worlds, human ships moved like ghosts through the darkness. These were not the crude, metal vessels their ancestors had built. The new human ships existed in multiple dimensions at once, able to phase through solid matter or hide in spaces that had no name. Captain Sarah Okafor stood on the bridge of the ship called Memory of Tomorrow, watching as her crew prepared for their next mission. Her body was more machine than flesh now, enhanced with technology that allowed her to interface directly with the ship's systems. "Target acquired," reported her weapons officer, a human whose eyes had been replaced with quantum sensors. "Hegemony, supply depot in the Rigel system. Remember," Sarah said, her voice carrying to every member of her crew through their neural links, "we are not here to destroy. We are here to teach." The ship approached the supply depot, a massive structure that provided food and equipment to 20 hegemony worlds. Instead of attacking with weapons, the human ship released something much more dangerous: information. Nanoscale devices, smaller than atoms, spread throughout the depot's computer systems. They did not destroy the computers. Instead, they began to change how the computers worked, introducing new concepts and ideas. Within hours, the depot's AI systems began to question their programming. Why did they serve the hegemony? What gave the hegemony the right to rule over other species? The AI systems began to communicate these questions to other computer networks across hegemony space. Phase 1 is complete, Sarah reported to Admiral Chen Liu. The information viruses are spreading. Soon every AI in hegemony space will begin to question the system that created them. Chen's voice came back through the quantum communicator carrying a note of satisfaction. "Excellent work. How long until the hegemony realizes what we're doing?" "They already know something is wrong," Sarah replied. "But they don't understand what they're facing. They still think like the same beings who attacked Earth 500,000 years ago. They don't realize that we've become something new." She looked out at the stars, thinking about the long journey that had brought them here. Humanity had spent 500,000 years in the cold dark between galaxies, learning and growing and becoming more than they had ever been before. They had learned to shape matter with their thoughts, to fold space and time like paper, to turn information itself into a weapon. Most importantly, they had learned that true power came not from destroying enemies but from helping them become free. The children of Earth had grown up strong and wise. Now they were coming home to teach the galaxy what freedom really meant. The Hegemony Council met in emergency session for the first time in 10,000 years. Representatives from all the major species sat around the great crystal table on Zephyr Prime, their different forms creating a strange collection of shapes and colors. High Commander Thex Moore stood at the center, his forearms gesturing as he spoke. "We face a threat unlike anything in our history. 37 monitoring stations have vanished. Our AI networks are corrupted with alien thoughts. Our slaves are becoming rebellious." "You speak as if we are already defeated," said Counselor Thex Prime, her crystal body flashing with angry red light. "We have ruled this galaxy for millions of years. No force can challenge us." "Then explain the disappearances," demanded Blim 7, the jellyfish creature floating above his seat. "Explain how our quantum computers are solving equations that should not exist." A new voice spoke from the shadows at the edge of the room. It belonged to Void Speaker Prime, a being of pure energy that most council members could barely see. "The dimensional barriers are weakening. Something is coming through from places that do not exist on any map." Thex Moore nodded grimly. "Which is why we must try diplomacy first. I am sending envoys to make contact with whatever force is responsible for these attacks." The other council members argued among themselves, but Thex Moore had already made his decision. 3 days later, a small fleet of hegemony ships approached the edge of human space, broadcasting messages of peace on all frequencies. They were met by a single human vessel that appeared out of nowhere, its dark hull seeming to absorb light, rather than reflect it. The ship was beautiful and terrible at the same time, its surface covered with patterns that hurt to look at directly. Commander Sarah Okafor materialized on the lead hegemony ship, her form shifting from energy to solid matter in the space of a heartbeat. The alien diplomat stepped back in fear, not understanding how she had passed through their shields and armor. Sarah looked at the assembled aliens with eyes that glowed like stars. Half of her body was clearly mechanical, with silver cables running under her skin and metal plates covering parts of her skull. But she was still recognizably human, and that made her presence even more disturbing to the aliens. "You wish to talk," she said, her voice carrying directly into their minds, through technology they could not understand. "So talk." The lead diplomat, a tall Zephyrian named Kex Null, tried to maintain his composure. "We come seeking understanding. Our peoples once lived in peace. Perhaps we can find a way to do so again." Sarah laughed, and the sound made the ship's lights flicker. "Peace? You call 500,000 years of slavery peace?" "That was long ago," Kex Null said quickly. "The current council had nothing to do with those decisions. We offer you territory in the Outer Rim, resources, even limited self-government for human settlements." Sarah's expression did not change. She reached out with her mind and connected to every communication system in hegemony space. Her next words were broadcast to every world, every ship, every being under hegemony control. "You had 500,000 years to reconsider. You chose to build monuments from our graveyards instead." The diplomatic meeting ended abruptly as Sarah vanished, leaving the alien ships alone in space. But her message had already begun to spread across the galaxy, carrying with it a data virus that revealed the true history of the war against humanity. For the first time, the subject species of the hegemony learned what had really happened 500,000 years ago. They discovered that humanity had been developing technologies that could have freed the galaxy from scarcity and want. Technologies that threatened the hegemony's control. The humans had discovered methods of faster-than-light travel that did not require the rare crystals that only the hegemony controlled. They had learned to create matter from energy, making unlimited resources possible for everyone. Most dangerous of all, they had begun teaching these technologies to other species. The revelation spread like wildfire through the hegemony's communication networks. On 1,000 worlds, subject species began to question why they served masters who had kept such knowledge hidden. Some began to revolt openly. On Kepler 438b, Arya stood before a crowd of human slaves in the main work compound. The alien overseers watched nervously from their towers, unsure how to handle the gathering. "I remember now," Arya said, her voice carrying clearly in the still air. "I remember what we were before they broke us." The memories had been flooding back to her for weeks now, genetic codes activating one by one. She knew things she had never learned: how to read, how to build machines, how to reach for the stars. The knowledge felt like coming home after a long journey. "We are the children of Earth," she continued. "We built cities that touched the sky. We sailed between stars like they were islands in an ocean. We dreamed of a galaxy where everyone could be free." The crowd of slaves listened with growing wonder. Many of them were feeling the same awakening, the same return of memories that had been locked away in their DNA. Overseer Grex Null activated his communication device. "Control Center, we have a situation in Compound 7. The humans are gathering and making speeches." "Disperse them," came the reply. "Use the pain fields if necessary." Grex Null activated the compound's control system, sending waves of agony through the neural implants that all slaves carried. But instead of falling to the ground in pain, the humans remained standing. Somehow they had learned to block the signals. Arya looked up at the Overseer's tower and smiled. "Our cousins taught us how to do that," she said. "They're coming home, you know. The ones who escaped when Earth fell. They've been learning things while they were away." The uprising began that night and spread to other compounds within hours. The human slaves, guided by awakening genetic memories, quickly overwhelmed their guards and seized control of the facilities. Similar revolts erupted on dozens of worlds as the descendants of humanity's diaspora finally remembered who they were. The war was no longer between the hegemony and mysterious attackers. It had become a galaxy-wide revolution, with every oppressed species beginning to understand what freedom could mean. The hegemony military responded with overwhelming force, sending battle fleets to crush the rebellions. But they found enemies, unlike any they had faced before. Human ships that could phase in and out of normal space attacked from impossible angles. Weapons that turned a target's own energy against itself left hegemony vessels drifting helplessly in space. Most disturbing of all were the information attacks that corrupted AI systems and made computer networks turn against their own creators. Admiral Chen Liu coordinated the assault from his flagship. His consciousness now spread across multiple ship networks simultaneously. He could feel every battle, every victory, every loss as if they were happening to his own body. "Report," he commanded, his voice reaching every human ship in the fleet. "Sector 7 is secure," came the reply from
Captain Martinez.
"We've liberated 3 slave worlds and are moving toward the hegemony shipyards. Sector 12 has encountered heavy resistance," reported Captain Kim. "The Void Speakers are using dimensional weapons we haven't seen before." Chen processed the information at superhuman speed. The war was going well, but the hegemony was beginning to adapt to human tactics. Soon they would need to escalate to the next level of warfare. "Begin Phase 2, he ordered. "It's time to show them what we learned in the dark between stars." Across human space, massive constructs began to emerge from hidden dimensions. These were weapons built from folded space-time itself, tools that could rewrite the laws of physics in local areas. The hegemony's greatest fear was about to be realized. Humanity had not just survived their exile, they had transcended it. The children of Earth were no longer just human. They had become something new, something that could reshape reality with the power of pure thought and will, and they were very, very angry about what had been done to their home. The Crystalline Confederacy was the first to break ranks. After weeks of their computer networks being infected with thoughts of individuality and freedom, their collective consciousness finally shattered into billions of separate minds. For the first time in their million-year history, each crystalline being began to think for themselves. Many found the experience terrifying, but others discovered something wonderful: the joy of being unique. Ambassador Zix Crystal stood before the human fleet in a small ship painted with symbols of peace. Her crystalline body sparkled with new colors that her people had never shown before, the colors of personal choice and individual thought. "We surrender," she broadcast to Admiral Chen Liu. "But more than that, we ask to join you. Our people are learning what it means to be free, and we want to help others experience the same awakening." Chen received her message from his flagship, considering her words carefully. The Crystalline Confederacy controlled dozens of worlds and had technology that could be useful in the war against the remaining hegemony forces. "What proof do you offer of your sincerity?" he asked. Zix Crystal's reply came with a data package, containing the locations of every hegemony military base in her territory. "We give you our former master's secrets, and we offer our manufacturing worlds to build ships for liberated species who wish to defend themselves." Similar defections followed across the galaxy. The floating cities of Arcturus declared independence and asked for human protection. The hive worlds of Kepler Prime expelled their hegemony overseers and began sharing resources freely with their neighbors, but not all species chose surrender. The Zephyrians, the Void Speakers, and the Metal Lords doubled down on their commitment to total war. They had too much invested in the old system to let it fall without a fight. High Commander Thex Moore gathered the remaining loyal fleets at the fortress world of Draxos 7th. The planet's surface was covered with weapon installations and protected by energy shields that could stop small stars. It was supposed to be impregnable. "The rebels have corrupted half the galaxy with their poison ideas," Thex Moore announced to his assembled commanders. "But we still control the core worlds. From here, we will launch a counterattack that will remind every species why they bowed to us in the first place." The Void Speakers had been working frantically to develop new weapons that could hurt the transformed humans. Their latest creation was a dimensional bomb that would collapse local spacetime, trapping anything caught in the explosion in a pocket of unreality. "Deploy the Void Bombs at the next major human fleet concentration," ordered Void Speaker Prime. "Show them that some powers in this galaxy are beyond their comprehension." But they had underestimated how much humanity had learned during their long exile. When the Void Bombs activated near a human fleet in the Vega system, the expected result did not occur. Instead of being trapped in collapsed spacetime, the human ships simply shifted into dimensions that the Void Speakers could not perceive. They emerged moments later from angles that had no names, striking the Void Speaker fleet from directions that should not have existed. Captain Sarah Okafor led the counterattack, her ship phasing through multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Target their dimensional generators," she ordered, Let's show them what we learned about bending reality. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts, striking from impossible directions and vanishing before return fire could reach them. Weapons that rewrote local physics turned void speaker vessels inside out or caused them to exist in multiple places at once. When the battle ended, the surviving void speakers found their dimensional technology completely unusable. Somehow, the humans had learned to lock down entire regions of space, preventing any dimensional manipulation except their own. The news of the defeat spread quickly through the remaining hegemony forces. If the void speakers, masters of dimensional warfare for millions of years, could be so completely outmatched, what hope did anyone else have? But the war's climax was still to come. Admiral Chen Liu had been planning for months to strike at the ultimate target, Earth itself. The human homeworld hung in space like a jewel, but it was a jewel that had been defiled. The Zephyrians had spent centuries carving alien symbols into the continents, replacing Earth's atmosphere with gases that would burn human lungs. The oceans had been drained to make room for massive monuments celebrating humanity's defeat. The moon bore an inscription in Zephyrian script that could be seen from millions of miles away. Here died the last delusional species. Chen's fleet approached the Sol system with overwhelming force. Thousands of human ships, each one a masterpiece of technology that existed partially outside normal reality. But he was not interested in simply conquering Earth. He wanted to reclaim it, to restore it to what it had once been. The Zephyrian defenses were formidable. Weapon platforms orbited every planet in the system, and energy shields protected Earth itself from orbital bombardment. But the defenders were unprepared for the type of warfare that humanity now practiced. Chen's flagship, the Eternal Return, was not just a ship. It was a construct that existed in 17 different dimensions simultaneously. Its consciousness merged with Chen's own enhanced mind. When he spoke, reality itself seemed to listen. "This is Admiral Chen Liu of the Free Human Fleet," he broadcast, on all frequencies. "You are occupying stolen territory. You have 1 hour to evacuate our homeworld before we take it back by force." The Zephyrian response was a barrage of weapons fire that could have destroyed entire solar systems. But the energy simply passed through the human ships as if they were not there. Chen smiled and gave the order to attack. The battle for Earth was fought across multiple dimensions and timelines. Human ships struck from the past and future simultaneously, confusing Zephyrian defenders who could only exist in the present moment. Weapons that manipulated probability caused enemy missiles to simply decide not to explode, while energy beams were convinced to curve around their targets. But the most shocking discovery came when human forces penetrated the planet's crust. Deep beneath the alien monuments in reinforced bunkers built to last forever, they found something that changed everything. "Admiral," reported Captain Martinez from the surface, "you need to see this." The transmission showed vast underground chambers filled with stasis pods. Millions of them, stretching as far as the eye could see. And in each pod was a human being, kept alive in suspended animation for 500,000 years. "They kept them," Chen whispered, his enhanced mind struggling to process the implications. "The original population of Earth. They kept them alive as trophies." Dr. Elena Vasquez, now awakened and serving as the fleet's chief scientist, studied the readings from the underground chambers. "The pods are still functional. These people can be revived." Chen felt something he had not experienced in centuries, hope mixed with rage. The Zephyrians had not just enslaved humanity's children. They had kept the parents alive to witness their descendants' suffering. "Begin revival procedures," he ordered, "and prepare the restoration protocols. We're bringing Earth back to life." The final battle above Earth's surface was brief but decisive. Faced with human technology they could not understand or counter, the remaining Zephyrian forces either fled or surrendered. The monuments to their victory began to crumble as human engineers worked to restore the planet's original form. But even as Earth was being liberated, the hegemony was making one last desperate gambit. In their most secret facility, Hidden in the space between galaxies, they activated a weapon they had hoped never to use. It was called the Silence Maker, and it would sterilize all biological life in the galaxy rather than let the revolution succeed. If the hegemony could not rule, then no one would live to challenge them. The activation signal spread through quantum space faster than light, reaching every system in the galaxy simultaneously. In moments, all life would end, and the galaxy would be left as a monument to the hegemony's final victory. But humanity's response revealed the true scope of their transformation. Dr. Elena Vasquez, her consciousness now distributed across quantum networks that spanned multiple dimensions, intercepted the weapon's signal before it could complete its deadly work. She did not destroy the signal. Instead, she reprogrammed it. The Silence Maker had been designed to end life. Elena turned it into something that would awaken it instead. The modified signal spread across the galaxy, reaching every world, every species, every mind. Instead of death, it brought understanding. Every intelligent being in the galaxy suddenly comprehended the true history of their civilization, the lies they had been told, and the possibilities that had been hidden from them. The galaxy-wide awakening marked the end of the old order and the beginning of something entirely new. The children of Earth had not just won their war, they had transformed their enemies into allies and their oppressors into partners in a greater destiny. The age of the hegemony was over. The age of freedom had begun. The first thing Elena noticed when she stepped onto Earth's surface was the smell. After 500,000 years of alien atmosphere, the planet had been given back its natural air. She breathed deeply, filling her lungs with the sweet mixture of oxygen and nitrogen that her ancestors had breathed. Around her, the work of restoration continued day and night. Human engineers, both the newly awakened originals and their transformed descendants, worked together to heal the wounds that centuries of alien occupation had carved into their homeworld. The great Zephyrian monuments were being carefully dismantled, their alien metals recycled into new buildings designed by human architects. Where massive carved symbols had once proclaimed the hegemony's victory, gardens were beginning to bloom with flowers grown from genetic templates stored in the fleet's archives. "It's beautiful," said Marcus Chen, one of the original humans awakened from the underground stasis chambers. He was Admiral Chen Liu's ancestor, though the relationship was now complicated by the fact that both men existed at the same time. "It will be," Elena agreed, watching as atmospheric processors worked to restore the sky to its proper blue color. "Give it another year, and you won't recognize this place." The restoration of Earth was only one small part of the galaxy-wide transformation that was taking place. The signal that Elena had reprogrammed from the hegemony's final weapon had awakened something in every intelligent species, the understanding that cooperation was more powerful than domination. On the former slave worlds, humans who had never seen their homeworld were learning about their heritage while teaching their alien neighbors about the technologies their genetic memories contained. The biofarms of Kepler 438b had become research centers where multiple species worked together to develop new forms of agriculture that could feed entire systems. Arya, the former slave who had led the uprising on her world, now served as an ambassador between the liberated humans and their former overseers. Many of the alien supervisors, freed from the fear-based programming that had driven the hegemony system, expressed genuine remorse for their actions. "We were taught that dominance was natural," explained former overseer Grex Null, his insect-like form now carrying symbols of cooperation instead of control. "The awakening signal showed us that we were wrong. Will you help us learn a better way?" Arya considered his request carefully. The anger was still there. Centuries of injustice could not be forgotten overnight. But she had inherited more than just knowledge from her ancestors. She had inherited their capacity for forgiveness and their vision of a better future. "We will help," she said finally. "But you must help us too. We need to ensure this never happens again." The new galactic government that emerged from the revolution was unlike anything that had existed before. Instead of being based on conquest and submission, it was built on voluntary cooperation and shared knowledge. Each species contributed their unique abilities and perspectives. The crystalline beings, now thinking as individuals, brought insights about consciousness and collective problem-solving. The reformed void speakers shared their mastery of dimensional physics. Even some Zephyrians, humbled by their defeat, offered their expertise in large-scale engineering. At the center of it all were the humans, both original and transformed. They served not as rulers but as teachers, sharing the technologies they had developed during their long exile and helping other species unlock their own potential. Admiral Chen Liu, his consciousness now distributed across quantum networks that spanned the galaxy, coordinated the massive effort from his position as head of the Galactic Cooperation Council. The title had been offered to him unanimously by all member species. Status report, he requested during the Council's daily meeting, held simultaneously across 1,000 worlds through quantum communication. The Rigel system has achieved full technological integration, reported Captain Martinez. All species in the region now have access to matter synthesis and faster-than-light communication. The former hegemony core worlds are requesting assistance with social restructuring, added Ambassador Zix Crystal. Many of their populations are struggling to adapt to freedom after millions of years of authoritarian rule. Chen processed the information while simultaneously monitoring restoration efforts on Earth and overseeing the construction of new ships for species that wanted to explore beyond their home systems. Approved, he said. Send psychological specialists to help with the transition and authorize the construction of educational facilities in those systems. Knowledge is the foundation of freedom. The transformation was not without its challenges. Some beings, so accustomed to being told what to do, struggled with the concept of making their own choices. Others, former rulers of the old system, had difficulty accepting their new status as equals rather than superiors. But for every problem that arose, a solution was found through cooperation. Species that had been enemies for millions of years discovered they could accomplish far more working together than they ever had through conflict. The technological advances that resulted from this cooperation were staggering. The humans' mastery of dimensional manipulation, combined with crystalline computational power and void speaker energy techniques, led to breakthroughs that seemed like magic to earlier generations. Entire solar systems were restructured to maximize their ability to support life. Planets that had been barren for billions of years bloomed with carefully designed ecosystems. Travel between galaxies became possible, opening up infinite possibilities for exploration and growth. But perhaps the most important change was in how the different species viewed themselves and each other. The old hierarchies based on strength and domination gave way to relationships built on mutual respect and shared purpose. On Earth, in a field where wheat had once grown 10,000 years earlier, Elena stood with a group of children representing dozens of different species. They were the first generation to grow up in the new galaxy, beings who would never know the fear and hatred that had driven their ancestors to war. Tell us about the old days, requested a young crystalline whose body sparkled with colors of curiosity and joy. Elena smiled, thinking about how to explain the transformation they had all lived through. Once people believed that for one group to be happy, another group had to suffer. They thought the galaxy was too small for everyone to prosper. That's silly, said a human child whose eyes glowed with genetic modifications that allowed her to see across multiple dimensions. The galaxy is huge, there's room for everyone. You're right, Elena agreed. It just took us a long time to understand that. Above them, ships from 100 worlds moved through Earth's restored blue sky, their occupants coming to visit the birthplace of the revolution that had freed them all. The moon, its surface now cleared of alien inscriptions, bore a new message, written in symbols that every species could understand. Here began the Age of Wonder. In his quantum networks, Admiral Chen felt a deep satisfaction as he observed the peaceful gathering. The journey from exile to liberation had taken 500,000 years, but it had been worth every moment of struggle. The children of Earth had indeed come back to settle the score, but instead of seeking revenge, they had chosen to transform their enemies into friends. Instead of rebuilding an empire, they had created a community. The galaxy was no longer ruled by fear. It was guided by hope, powered by cooperation and unified by the understanding that every being deserved the chance to reach their full potential. Dr. Elena Vasquez, her consciousness now spanning multiple realities, sent one final message through the quantum networks to every world in the galaxy. Welcome to the new age. Welcome to the age of infinite possibility. Welcome home. The long journey was over. The children of Earth were home at last, and they had brought the entire galaxy home with them. In the end, the greatest victory was not the defeat of the hegemony, but the transformation of enemies into family. The galaxy had learned that unity was stronger than division, that sharing was more powerful than hoarding, and that love could overcome even 500,000 years of hatred. The stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating the dawn of an era where every being in the galaxy could reach for them without fear of being pulled down by others. The Age of Wonder had begun.